To my right, wonderful to have Jane Lynch here. She was honored this weekend for her body of work and was also here with the film that I got to see, which I thought was just fabulous, The Adventures of Power. So thank you, Jane, for being here. To her right, Amy Redford, who as well has a body of work as an actor, but here this week has evolved from the role of actor into the role of director, and she's here with her film, The Guitar. Also a beautiful film. Thank you so much for being here. Misty Upham, who comes to the festival with the film Frozen River, in which she is a lead alongside Melissa Leo. And as well, Misty has a body of work, and it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you. Gillian Jacobs, who's here with the film Choke, which as well was at Sundance, along with Guitar and Frozen River and Adventures of Power. These are all films that were at Sundance. And Choke took the special jury prize for actors. It was an ensemble award for the cast. So it's great to have you here. Thank you so much, Gillian. And at the end, Summer Bishil, who is here with the film Towelhead, another film that was at Sundance. Incredible performance. Wonderful to have you here. Thank you, Summer. I'd like to start at your end, Summer, and just ask you if you could make a comment on your background and how you came to the role in Towelhead.
My father is Indian, but he's a Saudi national, and my mother is American, so that's my background. And it was just a breakdown that came to me like every other breakdown. I was auditioning and, almost every week and, trying to get the callbacks and stuff. And I auditioned and I waited several months, and I was on a road trip with my girlfriends when I found out that I had the callback. So it was a pretty standard audition process, and it lasted several months before I actually got the film.
Gillian, can you talk about a little bit about your background and how you got to being here?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I started out doing theater there when I was like 8 years old. And then after graduating from high school, moved to New York to go to Juilliard to study acting. So after graduating from Juilliard, I started auditioning for film and TV and theater, and I've done a mixture of both since I've been out of school. A couple of films, some TV pilots, didn't really go anywhere, and some theater in New York as well. And it was a pretty standard audition process for Choke. I went in for 2 roles actually. Ended up getting cast in the role of Cherry Daiquiri, which is the one I play, and it was a great experience. Really happy to have it go to Sundance and be purchased, and so happy to be here as well.
Misty?
Good morning, everybody. Let's see. I got started I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and I joined a native theater workshop one summer because it was a guaranteed meal a day, and I ended up really, really liking it. And that started my theater career when I was 13, and I joined several companies in Seattle and have got all the good classical training in Shakespeare, medieval, all the really great companies. And someone came to a show I produced and directed and acted in and videotaped it and sent it to LA, and they called me and said they wanted to get work for me. It was a casting director. And so I got my next 7 feature films by videotape because I still lived in Seattle. And I just moved to LA this summer. And Frozen River came along because the director, when she was making the short, she found me on a native website called nativecelebs.com. And she, in her words, she said she wanted to get an actress who looked Native American and not Italian. So I was one of the only darkies on the site. So we had like an hour-long conversation. I got the short, and she asked me back for the feature 5 years later, after many years of trying to raise the funds and everything. And became such a great film, so I'm very proud.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. You want to? Amy, I think the question for you is the same question, how you came to this project. But I know from last night, being at your screening, you told an interesting story of how it came to you first as an actor.
Yeah, I mean, I started out in theater, actually. It was sort of my first love. And I trained in classical acting, went to London and ACT and all that. And then but in high school I had been a director. I directed plays in high school, and then I kind of got hijacked into acting. Which I'm very grateful for, actually, as a director. And then I'd, been sort of looking for projects to direct, but hadn't really found the one I thought would be appropriate. And then the guitar was given to me to consider as an actress. And I read the script, and it spoke to me, especially at that time. And I brought it home, and I realized I kept firing myself in the role and hiring other actors in my head. So I thought, this may be a sign. So I went back to the writer and I said, because he'd given it to somebody else to option at one point, and the person that had optioned it, I thought, kind of ruined the script. For those of you that saw it, he put in like car chases, and I mean, it was like absurd scenes of the mob coming with guns and stuff. And so I optioned the script, and I said, let me try to get it done, and that was sort of the beginning of that.
Very cool. Ms. Lynch?
I'm in The Adventures of Power, which is here, and also Emily Hubley's movie, Toe Tactic. And, I'm not in the business of saying no, so they asked me, and I said yes. The Adventures of Power is Ari Gold's film, and I think he's in his early 30s, and he's just an amazing guy. He's a real eccentric, and the movie is about air drummers, and it's about how a guy finds his own power. Actually, finds out that he had the power within him all the time through a kind of journey he goes on, where he ultimately wins an air drumming contest. And I watched this guy do this film. I watched him. He was spent. He was exhausted. He was doing everything, not only drumming his heart out, which is really hard because there's no resistance. You have to, fake it. It's not an easy thing to do. And also, he's directing. He's setting up the shots for the next day. And I was just in awe of what he did. And I was really glad to be in his movie and to support him. And with Toe Tactic, Emily Hubley is Faith Hubley's daughter, and she's much beloved in Provincetown. And it's the award, her memorial award, that I was given last night, and I'm so proud. But it's a half animation and half live action film, and it's one of the strangest things I've ever experienced. Even shooting it, it was like my left brain shut off and my right brain was just, I felt like I was dreaming, and I don't remember anything about it. So when I saw the movie, it was as if I was experiencing it afresh. And if you get a chance to see Toe Tactic, shut off your left brain and just surrender.
Thank you, all of you. I'd like to start with you again.
Sure.
And actually have a conversation about craft. And before we get into like women things and diversity and all these kind of typical panel things, I'm actually really interested in talking about acting with actors and talking about it at the level of craft. And so I'd be curious to hear from you a little bit more about your background, your foundation, all of you. It's refreshing to hear people have theater backgrounds as cinema actors. So I sort of a theoretical conversation, a philosophical conversation about acting.
I started, I've always wanted to act, and I can't remember a moment when I didn't, but I went to graduate school. That was when I really started my training. I have the arrogance and self-importance of the classically trained. And I went to a classical training program at Cornell University, and I learned a lot about really just kind of neutralizing myself, getting rid of the habits and finding what's really there. It's comparing it to Michelangelo's David, that you just kind of chop away what's not necessary, and that's definitely what that school did for me. But I think I learned more about myself, which is key to my acting, through therapy and learning about myself. It seems as if every time I uncovered something about myself, I would find myself in a position theatrically, on stage, or in another medium, expressing that aspect. And I found out that it's not outside of me. I remember I was 19 years old, a closeted lesbian, tomboy, told to do Blanche Dubois. And that's not in me yet. So I thought I got in the habit of acting being out here. I have to find it and I have to put it in here. And my journey has been that everything exists in all of us. And that has been the joy of my journey in the last however many years. It seems every time, it works perfectly. Every time I get a role, it's something new in me that I can pull out and examine, and then it leads me down a whole other rabbit hole. And so I've had a really varied, exciting experience. And I've come to the point where I don't have any plans anymore. I don't have ambitions. I don't have goals. I'm really just going with the flow. And it's such a relief, and it's very satisfying.
Amy?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I too classically trained, but a lot of that, I think, training for me. I was just actually talking to a young actress about this. That it was somewhat of a security blanket, because if craft is something that nobody can just sort of anoint you with or take away. And I think, the life of an actor can be so brutal. And if there's a way to be able to stand on a platform, it's helpful. It was very helpful to me because I have a legacy, obviously. And so I needed to know that everything that I got and every step that I took was my own. So my process was actually started with dropping my last name and going to school and telling everybody I was Amy Hart, not Amy Redford. That was my first step. But I think that, for me, that was an important step. And also, I think very much you start getting these imprints on who you are, and especially going through high school, and people decide who you are, and the process of training is going, okay, well, what if I took that away? What would that mean? What if I took that already existing sort of insecurity or ego away? What would I allow in? And for an actor, I think it's incredibly important. And I just have to say one thing as a director. Now, looking at actors, it's being able to dial things up and dial things down. I think is an element of craft, and it's really helpful to know that that's there. To be able to say, to be able to take notes, because so much of acting now has to do with personality. The personality that's being put out there, and a lot of the a lot of the acting that I really appreciate is one that's unanointed like that. That's I think also if you're a young person going into acting, it's a great buffer between being just a young person in high school, or if you start in high school, and being thrust out into the world of the profession, because it's a brutal world. And having that oasis where you can come together with other people and learn your craft, and and language. I mean, studying for me was a whole other way of looking at language. Studying Shakespeare actually helped me so much in contemporary work, because I just learned how to open my mouth, and vocalize in a way that it was helpful emotionally. Your turn.
Well, when I was 13 and I joined the Native workshop, the Native Theater workshop, that was probably the highlight of my childhood. And I outgrew that within a year, and that's when I started joining companies all over Seattle. And the training I got was great. It was I was classically trained, but the best teacher I had was like this meditative Zen-like hippie who who taught us fencing, and I was trained in opera and took Gregorian chant and everything. And he invited me to a small little circle of just people who wanted to meditate on the art. And when I was younger, I was a speed reader, so I always say the best thing an actor can do is read as much as they can, and I would read a book a day. And because reading is so good, because you have to train your mind to to see, to feel your back thoughts, your history, what's going on with your body, what you're going to say next, your hesitations, everything. It was just all, like reading a novel. You know everything. You don't just see the reaction and hear the dialogue. And that's how we trained. So I read a book a day, and it was a very slow process, but it was really beautiful. And I think that is probably my most valuable asset to this day. And after theater, I got into film, and that was a whole new book of problems to get used to. Just because I was so used to just improvising, like, not really used to like 2-minute takes and that whole structure. So, but once I got into that, I started focusing on the little reactions that hardly anybody would notice, but were so important to me, like moving your eyebrow or licking your lips or something. Those things are very important to me in every scene. So that's why I love acting. It's just the little things.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because I remember shortly after I graduated from school, a casting director told me that they had to wipe the stench of Juilliard off of me. So I think that sometimes there is a bit of a stigma, at least in New York, with Juilliard-trained actors in specific, because we're thought to be overly technical, obsessed with our voice, and emotionless. So I consciously didn't do my vocal homework for a lot of school because I didn't want to confuse technique with acting, which I think is the trap of training sometimes, is because you get a lot of praise from your teachers when you're doing exactly what they tell you to do, but then there's a detachment that can happen from yourself. And you sort of think, if you're going through the motions of what they're saying, that this is acting, and you could actually feel very empty inside. So for me, I think I had to go through this process of rediscovering why I loved acting after I graduated from school. Go through periods of not working and really questioning if I wanted to be an actor, because I think like Amy said, it's such a difficult profession that I think you really have to love it in a pure way in order to survive a career in it. But the wonderful thing that Juilliard gave me, and what Misty was talking about, is we had this class called Approaching the Play in my freshman year, where we were assigned a play, we'd read it, and we'd just sit around and talk about everything about breaking down a scene the moment before. And I still carry around that sheet from that class to this day, and it's 3 pages of questions about characters, and it's applicable to everything, And that technique never leaves you. The understanding of plays as literature. I was a voracious reader as a kid too, and became obsessed with Shakespeare in elementary school, and all that serves you. But then in the day of shooting, or once you're up on stage, you kind of have to let that all go and try and be in the moment as much as possible with your scene partner. So, but I'm very grateful to my training, despite having the smell of it on me still.
For me, I wasn't classically trained, and I didn't even take very many acting classes. And when I got Towelhead, I had just finished filming a TV movie for the Disney Channel, and that was my only experience. And I think I had a total of 7 shooting days. So I was going in with a blank canvas. And for me, the different levels that I was reaching in my acting were like, at first, because I'm painfully shy, was just to get into the acting class, stay throughout it, and get through the script. And then I'd get through the script, and then I'd go to the other acting class. So it was like this painful process. And I always read what Misty said really resonated with me, because I think that's where I'm learning about acting for some reason, because I wasn't in the classroom. But when I was, a lot of the teachers would say, read. It's going to be your best friend. It's going to serve you the most. And that's what I continue to do. And when I was on Towelhead, I learned so much about the craft and developed a deeper respect for it. and hopefully learned a lot. Thank you.
I would certainly say that you learned a lot. Thank you so much, all of you, for your thoughts. And I always say, as a producer, that my feeling is that actors feel the feelings for the world, that an actor brings to the stage or the screen the feelings so that we can actually feel them as an audience. So I have such respect for what that means. And I wanted to you, Summer, ask you to talk a little bit about that role, because it's very intense. I mean, you had to draw way down inside in order to be within that character. And I'm very curious what that experience was like. Could we take care of her mic, please?
Sorry. Thank you. It was an intense character, and I was glad. A lot of people have said, how did you handle that role? And I don't know how I would have handled at that point in my life. Even though I was 18, I was kind of done with, the bullshit, pretty much, part of my French. And I had auditioned for a lot of bad stuff. And I had heard a lot about my ethnicity. It's like all anybody can see or ask you about. Like it's somehow something that should define you. And when I was 16 and 17, I found myself defining myself by where I had lived or what my ethnicity was. So when I saw the role, and she was so much an individual, and so much seeking of truth and unafraid of it. I had to play it. I became obsessed with playing it. It was like, I didn't know what I would do if I hadn't gotten it. And I probably would have quit acting at that point because I was so tired of, being too ethnic to act. What the heck is that? Because I look at America, and I mean, I love white people, Don't get me wrong, but there's also, brown people and Asian people and all sorts of things. So, I was glad to get such a deep role in something that meant something to me. And I threw myself into it, I knew that it was just a chance of a lifetime, and I wanted to savor every single second of it. I mean, I was so tired, but I was still, not want to leave the set. It was just every second of being in the character. And I remember doing scenes with Aaron Eckhart, who played the despicable character of Mr. Boso, and just being, in total awe of his, dedication. And, he's just an amazing actor, and I learned so much just by watching him. So, thanks.
Well, just to segue from what some of the themes in your comments, I'd like to ask you, Misty, about the role in Frozen River, and that was a significant step. We've talked about that a lot in terms of your character, Lila.
It's a pretty big step for Native actors because it's the first role for a Native actress that has depth, personality, and substance. And it was the first role I've really, really, really been proud of because I wasn't in, leathers and feathers, standing in the background looking stoic or, drunk on a reservation. And I hate those themes. I think people, I know the Native community, that's a reality to some people, but there's more than that. And I think that's my goal, is to show that Natives are real people. And like Summer was talking about, being so defined by my culture and my background has really almost been a curse in Hollywood, because there's a great role in a script, and I go to audition, and they look at my resume, and they're like, "Oh, you're a Native actress." And I'm like, no, I'm an actress, but I'm an actress who's Native. I'm not a Native actress. And they said, well, we don't have any roles for Native Americans in this film. And I always say, well, I can play anything that anybody else can play. I don't understand. And they'll say, well, we have a great Western coming up, or a great historical epic, or Pocahontas or something. And those are all great, and I would love to do a good film about that, but I would also love to play a normal character again. And Frozen River is a groundbreaking and historical step, and I am getting a lot of pressure from my people as an ambassador, because people are saying this is on par with like the first black actors to be taken seriously, but it's not getting the amount of attention that did. People still don't realize, and I don't think they really care at this point, but someday they will. And so Frozen River is a very, very big step for us.
I think that it's, we can't talk about diversity in the representation of women or people of color or lesbian themes. We really can't talk about it without talking about neocolonialism. I mean, it just fundamentally comes down to a kind of subconscious experience. And this country, I know, it prides itself on being a melting pot or whatever, but we still live with a level of colonialism in our representation of images. And I mean, that's kind of how I sum it up, and look where we are. And so I think it's really important to be thinking about ways that these things can evolve, that consciousness can evolve away from a foundation of neocolonialism, really. And so I'm curious from you, and I'm going to start with you, Amy, about what are the kinds of themes or stories or nuances that inspire you? And if it doesn't have anything to do with women or anything else, it's fine. But really, I'm asking you, personally.
It's funny because now that I'm directing, and it's really where I found that my heart is, and probably my future, God willing, lies. What kind of film, and what do you want to do? And a lot of it, just like you guys were all talking about, has to do with humanity. And I'm 37. I'm about to have a baby. There's a whole other. I'm part of a continuity now that I wasn't a couple of years ago, and so my consciousness is tweaked a little bit, in terms of my responsibility to put things in the world that I feel like are positive additions, including this little girl. And so I think part of what we're dealing with and what we've been dealing with, politically, I'll let that hang out there, it has to do with a kind of compartmentalization and a polarization of fear. And, you look around this town, we look on this panel, you look around your reality, and you've got some pretty basic uniting factors having to do with the heart and the soul and the mind. So in terms of themes, I mean, sometimes it can be, like the guitar is a girl in a room. Other films that I'm interested in are far more vast, incorporating a lot of different elements. But I think if I find that I'm being asked to re-examine what it is that I think something is, to re-examine, why can't you play the girl in the movie? Right. I'm like, why not? You're a girl. It's a movie. But I guess just pushing myself, and right now, frankly, even though it's not my background, I'm anxious to see some things having to do with some Muslim themes come out there and get in the forefront, because I just, at some point, and I'm not the person to do it, but like somebody to stand up and say, being Muslim is not a dirty word, and we're heading in that direction, and I'm really afraid. I feel like it's a very combustible thing. So, I mean, that matters to me, but, I have to kind of reach to what I know, but it's a very general answer to your question. I know, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to ask Ms. Lynch for your...
I'd like to paint with a broad brush. Thank God for independent films and this festival that supports independent films, because we wouldn't hear these voices and we wouldn't have these stories, because the studio system, and I don't mean to sound like a rabid Hillary Clinton supporter, and I'm not, I voted for Obama, but there is this, and it's our culture, it's not men's fault and it's not our fault. There's such sexism in the studio system. We wouldn't have jobs. Sometimes when I'm lucky enough to get a job in the studio system, I look up and I'm either the only woman in the world in the room, or just one of two. And there are so many stories to be told. I mean, I'm interested in humanity in general, but we are woefully underrepresented in terms of the stories in our popular culture. And I'm grateful to this festival and the other small festivals that support independent film and the people who give us money to do those films. And I love that you still have that sheet of those questions you ask yourself. That's great. I'd love a copy of it. Sometimes I start a role and I kind of barrel through it. And I know what I'm going to do. And then I'll get done with the scene and go, I really haven't examined this as thoroughly as I wanted to. And I think it's good to ask yourself those questions. Like I said, I'm interested in all of humanity, not just women's stories, but and like I said, I don't know if I'm the one to do it. I don't have that kind of will. But I would love to see more of our stories. And in the studio system, too, because that's where most of America goes to get their entertainment. And it would be nice, because we, as women, too, we just accept that, oh, yeah, this is a story about a man, and an overweight man with a gorgeous wife, and we accept it. And that's fine. I mean, I think overweight men deserve gorgeous women. But it's kind of the only story on television these days. I'm really glad that we're all together. Maybe, and the guys, too, if we all put our energy toward that, maybe we'll have more female films. I did a film with Amy Poehler and Parker Posey and Rachel Dratch that is not coming out.
No?
It's not going to come out. We did it 2 years ago. It's hilarious. It's kind of our version of a Judd Apatow film, and Warner won't release it. And there's like and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there's a memo going around Hollywood. No female stories, because the money is with the males. And it's called Spring Breakdown, and I think we should, everybody should march around Warner, and I'll probably never work there again, but that's okay. But it's hilarious, and it's a shame that it's not. They're not going to release it. It looks like maybe it'll go to DVD. So
they just did Sex and the City, though.
I know, and I'm wondering. Now, Sex and the City did really, really well, and so there's some money in the coffers for the studio system. I'm wondering if that will inspire them.
Well, they inherited that from New Line.
It's
Warner Brothers.
It is Warner's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's good. I didn't know it was Warner's. Good. That's good, because that might inspire them to, because bottom line, they want to make a couple bucks. And, Amy's stock has gone up, so has Tina Fey, who's not in it, but, I mean, their stock has gone up, and so it would be really nice to. And I felt so good about my work in it.
We hope to see it.
Yeah, I hope so, too.
Gillian, do you have any formal concerns?
Oh, yes. Well, I made sure my mother went to see Sex and the City on the opening weekend for the pure reason to show that women could open a film over the age of 25. I got her really riled up about it. She was calling me, forwarding me emails about the open gross, and I mean, I think that there's a diversity of stories beyond women's relationship to men and clothing and material goods that we'd all like to see. But it is a great thing to see a film about women open number one when it was predicted to not do very well. Yeah. So that was, I think, a real victory. Yeah. It's been interesting for me because I've played a stripper twice. I've played a prostitute. I've played a lot of homeless drug addicts, and these have all been in the independent world. But coming from a background where I played, I did Chekhov and Shakespeare from an early age. And I had a very strong classical training to then go into the film world where these are the kind of roles I'm being asked to play. I've loved every film I've been a part of. Everyone has been an incredible opportunity for me, but it's just interesting to see how young women are viewed and the kinds of roles that are available to them. So I think that, it's nice to be challenged, and these roles have certainly been a challenge to me, but I would like to have the challenge of bringing nuance to a girl who's not, defined with such a broad pen. But sometimes you feel like I have worked for a female director once. The first film I ever did was with a female director, but that really has been the exception. In the theater, actually, I've worked with more women, female playwrights and female directors. But I do think it's a matter of people with a lot of money believing that women can make money as well. So I don't know exactly how to convince them of that, but maybe Sex and the City too.
Thank you so much for all of your thoughts. I think it's been a very interesting conversation, and I think that there's probably folks that are here that may have questions for some of these
I
ladies?
kind of tend to assume that they usually, it's usually everybody's doing something for the first time, a lot of times. And it seems to me the lower the budget, the more can-do attitude there is, too. But it kind of depends on the director. The same with the studio thing, I guess. I don't know that we can say it's one way or the other, but I do find that independent films, when I work on them, it seems like the attitude's a little better. You know, nobody's getting paid a lot of money, and there's a real kind of what can I do to help kind of attitude.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It's if a lot of these films you take, you know, and as an actor you take and you're like, damn it, I'm going to do this movie. It's going to cost me money, but I have to do it because I believe in it. And I guess there's a part of that gives you a little bit of entitlement. You know, you sort of just say, okay, well, you've asked me to come to the table. With all my faculties, and so you know, God willing, you have a director that will accept that and say, "Wow, they could bring something." You know, I learned more as a director, as an actor, from things that were done. I'd see, you know, ways that things were wasted, or you know, things as simple as the value of pre-production. You know, because I would get there as an actor, and I know they have $5 to make this film, and we'd waste 3 hours because the set decorator and the costume designer never had a conversation, and you know, but I do think that being able, even if it's not a vocal, I mean, you're talking about being incredibly shy. I think more of you is invited to the table. If you're cast in a bigger budget film, you know, you put up, you shut up, you're getting paid well to keep your mouth shut and do your job. And that's where the craft part comes in, because you hit your marks, you know your lines. And, you know, unless somebody really asks you your opinion, same thing in television, you know, it's not there. But there's usually more, you know, looser lines and boundaries, which it can be incredibly satisfying to feel implicated in it in a larger way. And sometimes a lot of my friends don't. I mean, it's probably why I had an instinct as a director, because I like the whole process. Other friends of mine go in, they're just like incredibly focused on their part. They don't want to know anything else, and that's welcome too. So I think there's probably a broader spectrum of approaches that are allowed.
Do you have any comments, ladies? Gillian, Summer, Misty?
Well, I like indie film because it's you do have more input, and it's kind of like working on like the school news station where everybody has input. So that's better, because I did an ABC production. It was like a $35 million budget, and then Frozen River, the short, was like $30,000 budget. And I definitely preferred Frozen River just because the amount of creativity I was given and the space to ad-lib.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm curious, with male actors, you know, I'm talking to somebody like Carlos Howard, and I say, who do you emanate? He goes, well, Marlon Brando. And men have these archetypes that they look at, and I'm wondering for women actresses and women actresses of a new generation, do you watch the old films? Are there still archetypes that you watch? Judy Holliday, for instance,
Right.
you see her and it's jaw-droppingly incredible.
Yeah.
Are these actresses still watched? Are they still part of who influence you and how you approach your craft?
I'm a Greta Garbo freak. I learned so much from her. Yeah, and she had something very, very special, and she had such a skill. She basically did the same thing all the time, but it was brilliant. You know, so I learned a lot from her going back. That was kind of my fascination.
I had a childhood obsession with Katharine Hepburn.
Oh, yeah. Great.
So I basically read, my mom would buy me a lot of biographies of what she called, you know, strong women. So Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, Katharine Hepburn, and I kind of latched onto Katharine Hepburn at a young age. So I watched a lot of Bringing Up Baby and Philadelphia Story and all those films. I just did a play actually in New York with Ellen Burstyn and watched King of Marvin Gardens for the first time after working with her. So I'm in awe of Ellen. And she's not of the same generation of those women at all. But I've always loved old. I'd much rather go see an old film than a new film. A lot of the time.
Philadelphia Story, you know, we don't make comedies like that anymore. Intelligent, witty, these really attractive over entitled people, and I just love that. I love the films of Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn and Jimmy Stewart. I love that style, that whole flavor.
My girl's Vivian Lee, and my mom raised me on movies like Gypsy, Anti-Ming,
Musicals.
And so I grew up, and I think it's very important for every actor to view the beginnings of film, because that, it was the golden era for a reason, and they managed to make such great, memorable films without much vulgarity or even cursing, and that's a really high achievement nowadays, and that I admire that about the old films.
That was a studio system too, so you listened to the boss, but they were, and the director was, the director answered to the studio head, but the director was responsible for the flavor of the film, and there were just some really, really good directors and designers back in the old golden ages.
Amy or Summer?
I love Natalie Wood and Audrey Hepburn and, all those fun films. So, yeah.
Amy?
It's funny, I'm actually developing a film right now, and this sort of not as an actress, I admired her, but I'm making a film about the actress Hedy Lamarr. And she was fascinating because before she came to America, she was a comedian in Austria, and she was funny and vivacious and interesting and complicated and flawed and brilliant, and truly, truly brilliant. And she came to the States, and she didn't speak much English, and they shut her mouth, and they stood her in a corner, and she was alarmingly beautiful. And so I've sort of been able to get into 40s Hollywood a little bit, and exactly what you're talking about. The way that people got away with stuff, like these subversive women, in this incredibly tightly controlled environment, and you look at certain moments, and you go, that's so irreverent, and I love it. I think it's very exciting, and just as you spoke about, doing the same kind of thing now, like what does that mean now? You can do anything on film now, no one's going to be shocked no matter what you do, but there's another kind of subversive thing that maybe we can start to percolate, that we can take, as a cue from.
There were more stories back in the good old days about women. They, the women movie stars. Mildred Pierce. There were stories about when Greta Garbo did a movie, and she probably did 1 or 2 a year. They were a woman's story. Anna Karenina, Camille, Ninotchka. They were women's stories, and even within this, I guess the studio heads saw the value of putting a gorgeous, interesting woman at the head of the story. It's just that we don't have that value today, and that's kind of sad.
Well, Katharine Hepburn, she was labeled box office poison,
right?
And she came back basically by going back to the theater and doing Philadelphia Story on Broadway, and then Howard Hughes actually bought the rights to the film for her, and so she basically orchestrated her own comeback, which is, I think, incredibly admirable. So a man bought it for her. She did it herself. She used him. She got what she needed. But I'm a terrible singer, but I used to take singing lessons when I was little, and my singing teacher's husband ghost wrote Tony Curtis's autobiography, and then he wrote a biography of Lise Brooks and Greta Garbo. So I sort of would listen to him about all these stories about old Hollywood when I was supposed to be doing my scales and everything. And I really do have a deep admiration for the way that those women managed their lives and their careers.
And who was more spontaneous on screen than Katharine Hepburn? She was just like a little bird all over the place, and within this tightly controlled system, she did her own thing, and she was brilliant. Bette Davis.
Steamroller.
Absolutely. Some really interesting women.
Yeah, Bette Davis and Hedy Lamarr were very good friends, and they were like just combustible. They were always in trouble, always. which I
Ah, the
appreciate.
good old days.
Yeah, I
You
know.
got to start causing some trouble. Ladies.
Oh,
Absolutely.
God.
Tallulah Bankhead. Yeah. Joan Crawford. You can go on and on. What's happened?
My question about the business side of it. I mean, being that it's a tough business, how do you deal with the business side of it in terms of when you don't have acting work, you know, the survival job? What did y'all have to do to keep going?
Should I take this one? Okay. Well, there's there's I think two different issues. Some of the teachers that trained me said, beware of your day job when I first started acting, because you need to be a little hungry and a little desperate. And there's something about taking a day job that is just going to pay the bills, but isn't going to sap, that isn't going to make you, you're sort of doing something creative, but you're not really doing what you want. And, and so there's part of that I definitely listen to. People might find this somewhat surprising, but I definitely have made my own way. I'm very stubborn that way. And so when I first got out of school, I was working at, you might know this place, Toronto Photo. And it's in New York. They do actors' headshots. It was a nightmare. And I was like, if I don't get a job, I'm going to kill myself. So, I just wanted to address in terms of the business side of things, the thing that I've learned from being a director and a producer, for actors and for, the business is the fence around the creative. And it's a really good thing to understand. It's a really good thing to go to school on your contracts and or have somebody that can help you navigate what it is that you're doing. Because if there's money to be made, you should participate in that. And, it's why I was very supportive of the writers during the writer's strike, because there's new revenue streams and other people should be able to participate in it. And there was films that I did, independent films where, you're literally like taking the bus to work and then something, big happens with it and you're like watching all these other people make a lot of dough, of which there are probably 3 of those people that, and I learned a lot on my film about being a woman and navigating the business territory, because I was constantly told, we just don't want you to worry about that. You just shouldn't have to, as close to worry your pretty little head about it as I could have come in contact with. But you really have to advocate for yourself, whatever end of the profession you're in, and I would highly recommend, having those conversations, sort of saying, well, I do want a couple of these things. It doesn't mean you have to have, like, Evian to wash your hair in. That's not the stuff that matters. But to protect yourself, because it's, that you get, and also, the whole tax and money and all that kind of stuff, it can be really brutal. You make a lot of money on one film, and then you don't work for a while, and then you're hit. They're like, oh, but you're worth this. You could make, however many thousands of dollars every week. And you're like, no, that's impossible, So I just think putting a kind of business head on, taking people to lunch, understanding contracts, talk to producers, and really having an understanding, because it's a business. It's not a hobby. If you're on the end of it that we are at, and if you're involved in producing or directing, you have to understand where the currency is going, where they're spending the money. You might be able to take some back and apply it to places that you really care about. Sorry.
I think that's a great point. I thank you for saying that. That's because as actors, I think it's our nature, and it's an assumption too out there, that we're just so grateful to be invited to the party. There's so many of us, and if you're not up in the George Clooney, Jennifer Aniston area, the stars who get the, I don't think she gets 20 million, but I think he does. That means that the rest of us down here are getting scale, and they assume that we'll do it, and we do, because we're just so happy to have work. But I really appreciate what you said, because I think if you start investigating where the currency is going, and you just get knowledgeable, you present yourself, people can smell the power on you, and that you know it, and then there's respect that comes with that. So I think the more you know, the more it shows on you, and you emanate a different kind of energy, and you become someone to be reckoned with, not somebody to go, oh, well, we'll just give her a scale.
Well, it's very unstable, because you go from, like, surviving on top ramen to Kobe beef, you know? And it's like when you're on film and making money, it is thousands of dollars a week, and that lasts for however long. And after a movie, like, you know, I usually just get throwaway jobs because of my schedule. And so I'm doing stuff like counting cans and cleaning houses and, you know, just whatever I can get to survive and pay the rent. Because you go from extremely, extremely poor to living the glamorous life, and you get a taste of it, and you know, it is addictive. It is like, I just want that back. And that's why, you know, it's an incentive, but it's also the work in the community of on set. It's like, becomes a big family. And when you go back to your normal life in your little dank apartment, and you're riding the bus and nobody knows you, and there's no actors around, it gets hard. So I live for the next set just to feel that family again.
Go. Yeah, I mean, for me, I remember working at Pavilions when I think I was 15 and a half, and I was like, all right, I can get a freaking job now. I'm going to get one. And I was bagging groceries, and I hated it, you know, and I was auditioning, and I was going out for stuff, like kids' shows, you know, and I obviously wasn't watching those shows anymore. I was way past that age, but I wanted it so bad. It was anything other than working there, and that fueled me, you know. And I remember going in for Towelhead and being like, I have to get this. There is no other way. And that helps. It, you know, it makes you better. So, you know, I liked that. And I do agree with what they were saying. I don't think it makes you less of an artist to, you know, wear the businesswoman hat for a while. I don't think it makes you less of an artist or some, like, greedy little person, you know. It's smart, and it does protect you in the end, because there are those periods where you don't have anything, and, you know, they can always say, oh, well, we just chose somebody else, and, you know, you're out of luck. So I think you should try and make the money when you can make the money. So that's what I got to say.
Yeah, I was a nanny, which was really actually very fulfilling. I still babysit for them now for free. And I think that the hard thing is you have to have the hunger, but not the smell of desperation on you. Yeah. Because the periods in my life when I started to feel desperate, you just watch the faces in the room go like, this girl's frightening me right now. I don't want So I think for my, you know, everyone from my therapist to my mother is like, hobbies. You need hobbies. My mom thinks book clubs have a magical healing power. I love art, so I find myself going to a lot of museums and galleries and reading books and getting excited about different other art forms, going to see old films. But yeah, I think that my expectation for my career is that I will continue to work. I don't know in what capacity, how large of a film or how small of a film, but I finally do now have an expectation of work. I used to think every job was the last job I would ever get. So I think that's important to have that base level of confidence going in. But besides that, I guess all I know is that it's not going to happen in the way that I expected it to.
I have the sense that, yes, I have the sense that we'll always go to the movie theater. It may not be as big, and they may not get the, and I'm sure movie theaters will be closing. I think that's inevitable, especially the big multiplexes. But I think we'll probably see that kind of do a big nosedive and then probably come back up, because we do love gathering together. We love to do that, but just not as much. But yeah, I think so much more is going to be, I watch movies on my computer. I'm too lazy to get up and put it in the TV. I just sit at my computer. And you miss a lot to see a beautifully shot film on your little Mac, But yeah, and be able to watch well, I guess you can now. You can watch a movie on your phone. Yeah.
I think yes, and yet it also creates opportunity too. I think the landscape for independent film is strange, and nobody has a clue in terms of distribution. And there's films that might be able to get a shot at least getting seen in that way. And there's a lot of creative things happening on that level in terms of distribution. It is a little painful when you make your film and you remember you spent like 45 minutes deciding between Velvet or Felt on a couch, and somebody's watching it on their iPod. Like oh gosh. But there was this whole thing about that the 3D phenomena is going to replace a lot of the and I don't know, maybe that's true. I still like those films every once in a while. I sometimes need to sit in a dark theater and not but I think that it would be good if there is a way to create content for those mediums instead of creating something that you want to see on a screen, and then it gets reduced to that. Then I think there's a lot of money to be saved and a lot of money to be earned, and a different aesthetic that could come out of it, different technologies. There's something that I think there's a camera called the Red camera, and that's democratizing filmmaking in a certain way, because you get more people, you can get cameras into places that you couldn't before economically. So in terms of diverse stories, you might have an opportunity to get a camera to somebody who wants to tell a story who isn't being represented in the general public. And sometimes that'll go right from there to, on-screen TV or internet. So as one, it might be replacing, but it also might be taking us in a different direction that could potentially be interesting. And I think it's probably a good idea to welcome it because it's going to happen.
Well, I think even though HBO and Showtime are owned by the same corporations that own ABC and CBS, they're all owned by one guy. I think on cable you're seeing more creative. I think it's more creative. The content is riskier. And it's not at all dependent on an advertising base. Mm-hmm. And I think Weeds is an amazing show, and The Sopranos was something else. And I haven't seen the David Duchovny show, but I hear it's great on Showtime. So I think there's more opportunity to be creative in the cable area, and I'm glad that cable has kind of come up in prominence, and that we have the opportunity to see better stuff, because the networks are there's a lack of creativity and anything thought-provoking. There's some exceptions. Like I love The Office. I don't know how that got on network television. Someone must have not been looking for a moment.
Yeah. I just shadowed Bill D'Elia on Boston Legal, and it was a great experience because it's a very muscular show from top to bottom. And Saffron, who's in my film, was in it, and Bill had come to see the guitar at Sundance and loved it. God bless him, and he invited me to come shadow, and it was a really great experience for me, because I went from I thought, okay, well, they're not gonna let me direct an episode of Boston Legal. But I'm going to take what I learned from that and go, okay, well, how am I going to pull this off? There's a series that I'm very interested in, based on a collection of short stories called Lost on Purpose, and it's about women going to faraway places to find themselves. It's an American woman from New York going to China. It's a family going to Mexico. There's a lot of these stories, and so I think. For me, also being a viable director, being able to say, look, I did something where lots of people watched it and they didn't run away screaming, it'll help. And it can also help, when I go to make a feature and they're going, I don't know, this is a chick flick, I'm not sure, blah, blah, that I can say, look, I've delivered to a large audience, So part of my head is there. And sort of stealing from one sandbox and putting it in another. But there are great roles in television, and I think that's an exciting place to play. Yeah.
Ladies, maybe you have any comments about that?
Yeah, there's definitely better work for women in television, and hopefully I'll be a part of that one day. But, I got two problems I have to deal with, or have two doors to break down, and that's first, getting out of the native stereotype, and then second, being taken seriously as a normal actress, as a female. So I have ways to go before I can even think about good work for myself on television. Oh. But yeah. For Frozen River, when we were trying to get funding, one of the studios, when Courtney pitched the idea to them and showed them a short, they were like, "Yeah, well, it's an interesting story, but nobody's going to go watch it because it's a movie about two women and neither of them are hot." And she was like, "Well, what do you want? Like, sex scenes or car chases, like more car chases?" And they wanted that, and they wanted to change, that's what they said. They said neither of them are hot, and one of them's an Indian. That was the comment. So they wanted to change my character to, a white girl. So Courtney walked away from the deal, and I'm so glad she did because, it's opened such a big door for me. But hopefully one day I'll work on television.
Add just one thing anecdotally, because it was so outrageous to me. But at one point in time, I was developing something for television, and I did have a television executive at a prominent network say to me, Indians are just too long-winded for television. Which is probably true.
Probably.
One more question? Maybe two more?
I was trained as a sort of a robot, not in terms of just not having any range or anything, but I go to the director and I ask him beforehand, "Give me details, please, of what exactly you want," and they give me details, and then I ask them for a color or a song to think of for the kind of emotion they want. And I go think about it for 5 minutes and beat it into my head. And then I just chill out and just hang with the crew and just get something to drink. And then when they say, when I'm called to set, I go on set, and I always get really nervous right before action. I get nauseous and just always nervous because I don't even know why I'm in this business because I have a fear of people looking at me. So right before action, I'm always just, everybody's going to be staring at me. I'm so, shy. And once they say action, it's like I become a different person and I lose all my fear and I just do it. And it's automatic. And I'm not, saying I'm the best or anything, but they call me one take wonder. And I really credit that with the meditative training and the reading. And it's just details. Give me details, I'll do it. Because that's an actor's basic job, is just to do exactly what they say, what they want. If you want me to be pouty, tell me what kind of pouty. So I'll do it.
Anyone else?
Oh, I'll say something. I find, in acting school, one of the things that really I remember is the economy of movement and economy of energy. And I remember we would do yoga, and they'd say, "Come to your feet and see if you can't do it with an economy of energy, as opposed to, this kind of a thing. Just find what muscles you need and use just those." And that really stuck with me, and I do that right before I take off. Hook into one, maybe prep one emotion, because I know what my details are. It's good to hold on to the details. That keeps you focused, too. But I just go to something very simple, and so I can stay, that nothing outside comes in and mucks up what I want to do. And hooking into the eyes of the person you're acting with, too.
Yeah. I actually got one of my favorite pieces of acting advice from a sound mixer guy that was, on the people that are holding the boom and on the set. Because it was my first film, and I was the lead, and I was a little flipped out. And I was trying to figure out how much to project my voice. I couldn't really figure out how much, how loud do I have to be to reach the And he said, just imagine that the camera has ears. And so if it's a shot and the camera's over there, you can speak a little louder to communicate. If it's right there, you just have to be very quiet because you have a mic or the boom will be right there. And, and I thought, oh, God, that makes so much sense just in terms of acting style. That when you're trying to, express something to somebody across the room, you can gesticulate, you can be more expressive. But if you're right here, it's really, just like you said, just hooking into somebody's eyes and being quiet. I think. And also, I think it's on this world of the set, it's very, for me, it was very easy to I like the crew and joke around with the crew, except when they call action, the crew's over there eating a donut and you're on camera. So my friend, I was asking advice from a friend of mine who has done a lot of film, and she said, just find a quiet space. And one of the ways that I could do that as an actor was actually sit in for myself when they bring in second team, because I realized that they won't bring you in until they're absolutely ready, and you have to orient yourself. So sometimes I would sit in as my own stand-in and just kind of take in what was going around, so that when the other actor would come and sit down, I would be able to just kind of go.
You're nodding, Gillian.
Oh, also for purely vain reasons, I just did this film, and this actress, who's a very big actress, I noticed was sitting in for herself all the time. And I was sort of like, that's odd, because, most actors, they want to go back to their trailer and watch TV or whatever. And then someone was like, no, she's getting to the age where she wants it lit for her face.
Oh, wow.
And she doesn't want it lit for the stand-in's face. She wants it lit for her face. And my eyes kind of went wide. I was like, I want it lit for my face, too.
I love that.
So I started sitting in more. But yeah, it's I think sometimes it's different. There are different parts you play where you sort of instantly click in. I know this person like the back of my hand. I could do this in my sleep. And then there are other times you're like, why did they cast me? I'm pulling the wool over everyone's eyes here, and they're going to discover very soon that they should replace me. But a funny combination actually was I did a pilot that was a half-hour sitcom, and with a half-hour sitcom, it's taped in front of a live audience. So they have these. It's like for me, it was like, oh, the theater. Oh, there's people and seats, and I'm starting to open myself up and make myself. And they're no, Gillian, face the camera. So for me, it was difficult for my mind to wrap around the fact that here's the audience, and I'm still talking like this, not, to the other actor, because everything in me wanted to sort of open myself up. So that was a really odd combination for me of theater and film.
Excuse me, when they, we shot the movie, then they changed, head people at Warner Brothers changed, and, that's their prerogative. They can decide not to release something. So I don't know what the particulars were, but I know it tested really, really well. So it's a shame.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.